Good morning, YouTube. This is HeKnowsHisSport. Here to talk to you about Game 1, basically the summary of all the playoff games that we've watched. They've been exciting, I'm going to be honest with you. I wanted to start off first with the San Antonio and the Dallas Mavericks. We all knew that this series was going to be a tough one. I still got San Antonio winning this series by 6 games. The first game was pretty tough. They won barely 890-85, but Tim Duncan showed up. He dropped 27 points. Tony Parker did some impactful things. Manu Ginobili, although he is not his old self, he did some intangible things to make you see that, he was going to step up and do his thing. But the reality is the San Antonio Spurs won that series. They did what they were supposed to. They won on their home floor. I believe they're going to take Game 2. And then when they go back to Dallas, we'll see how things turn around. Let's get to the next game. The Oklahoma City Thunder and the Memphis Grizzlies. We all know Oklahoma won 100-86. Like I said, the difference maker, the X factor was Russell Westbrook. I knew his presence, his mere presence alone would be the deciding factor of how this series would pan out. I had Oklahoma City Thunder winning this series in 5 games. And based on the first game performance, the only knock that I had on OKC was the third quarter. The third quarter performance was lackadaisical at best. They kind of slept when they were up 22 points and they let the lead go down to 2 points. I do believe that the game philosophy and the game strategy that Scott Brooks is going to have going into the second game, he's going to make sure those guys know that they have to keep their foot on the gas pedal and to not ever let up. Because if they have slippages like that, they can make the series go longer than it really has to go to. But I have this series anticipated to go 5 games because Russell Westbrook is the X factor. It's obvious that Mike Conley and Tony Allen cannot stay in front of him. Now let's get to the Golden State and the LA Clippers. I did tell everyone that the Golden State Warriors would beat the LA Clippers in 7 games. So far, based on those predictions, we're starting to see the fruit that's bearing from that prediction. The Golden State Warriors obviously won the first game. They won 109-105. It was a very impactful win. And mind you, the reason why the win was so impactful is because Stephen Curry and Klay Thompson went 13 for 36. Andre Iguodala was on the bench. The fact that they won the game with those circumstances tells me a lot about the Golden State Warriors. I believe that the Golden State Warriors was going to win this series because of the fact that they're more talented. And I'm still of the mindset, like everyone else, that the Clippers still have to erase the soft tag that they have with the NBA. That's the reputation that Blake Griffin has, and that's the reputation that that team has. And they have to erase the reputation that they don't play defense and that they're just a Lob City team. Until further notice, I think the Golden State Warriors are going to continue to do an effective job to exploit those weaknesses. This is why I got Golden State winning this series in 7 games. And let's be honest, Stephen Curry is not going to continue to struggle like that. Once his game starts to go on, good night for the LA Clippers. Now let's get to the next game. To me, it was probably the most exciting game last night. I watched this game upwards late until like close to 2 o'clock in the morning. It was the Portland and the Houston Rockets. I didn't think that this game was going to go into overtime, but this first game was very exciting and thrilling for all NBA fans that love playoff games to go to the depths. This game right here, satisfied everyone's, playoff hunger. The game recap, Portland obviously won the game 122-120. But like I said, Damian Lillard and LaMarcus Aldridge would show up. I knew that those boys would come to play. When you got somebody like LaMarcus Aldridge putting up 46 points and 18 rebounds, the only thing was he fouled out. I didn't believe that he deserved that last foul call, but it is what it is. We all know how these NBA referees can be. But Damian Lillard showed up. He hit some big-time shots and big-time moments, and he was able to get Patrick Beverley fouled out. And I think that once Patrick Beverley wasn't able to be a pest on him anymore, that was the deciding outcome. Now, Jeremy Lin, who is a guy that we really cannot trust, he showed up. Jeremy Lin had 14 impactful points. To be honest with you, I would never trust a guy like that with the basketball, but he did some things to keep the Houston Rockets in the game. Although James Harden and Dwight Howard had 27 points apiece, I felt like there were microcosm moments where they became miniature and they were like mini-me's and they didn't show up, especially James Harden. You know, his game is predicated upon going to the basket and creating shots for himself and going to the foul line. I mean, he was very timid with the last few shots. You know, this is kind of premature on James Harden. I don't know if I want to say this, but based on the way that James Harden is playing, it seems like, you know, when the pressure amounts, you know, he's starting to get that, you're starting to feel that Tony Romo-ish vibe from him. Like he freezes up in those moments, you know. So the reality is, you know, I don't want to say that yet because the jury is still out on James Harden, but we'll see the rest of this series. I got Houston winning this series in 6 games. I did believe that this series, even though I didn't believe that this series would be the most toughest series, I did believe that this series would be the second most toughest series in the first round. And so far, it's proven to be so. As a matter of fact, this series is even challenging Golden State and the LA Clippers as the toughest series in the first round. But we'll see. The next game, Atlanta and Indiana. I had Indiana winning this series in 5 games if they showed up. Obviously, based on the first game performance, this team did not show up. They still have those lingering issues, which I thought, you know, from the beginning in previous videos, that they were in this weakened mindset. I thought that the weakened mentality that they had would linger over into the playoffs. And sure enough, it did. This is why I said that if Indiana showed up, they would win in 5 games. But now that they haven't showed up, I still got them passing the Atlanta Hawks because I can't imagine them losing this series. Because if they lose this series, Frank Vogel gets fired, and then a lot of the players on that team, you know, they're going to have some makeup problems. You know, there's just going to be some issues where the team is probably going to have to break apart. But I don't see all of those factors taking place. This is why I see the Indiana still winning this series. But Jeff Teague is going to be very hard. You know, Paul George did talk about, oh, he's going to be the one to check him. But I don't know. Paul George, his mentality is not even in basketball games. This is why I said he didn't deserve a $90 million contract. I don't know what Larry Bird was thinking. You know, I don't know what he was on that day to give this boy a $90 million contract. See, this is the problem with these young boys in the NBA. This is the problem with this generation. They're giving these boys big paychecks, and they haven't done anything to deserve it. Hence, the greatest player of all time, Michael Jordan, when he was interviewed on Oprah back in 99, 2000, talked about this. You know, he predicted this stuff. He said that, you know, we're in a modern era of an NBA where guys are getting big paychecks and they're not deserving it. What has Paul George done? He is not a superstar. This year was supposed to be the year for him to ascend into superstardom. What has happened? Why is he frozen? You know, he reminds me of LeBron James when LeBron James was in LaFrozen moments. I don't understand, why is this boy not showing up? It doesn't make sense to me. And this is why I told everyone George Hill needs to be traded. I don't understand why they're paying a point guard like that $8 million. That's why I said San Antonio set up the Indiana Pacers. They knew that this guy wasn't, you know, what he was cracked up to be. They knew he was a bust. That's why they traded him over to the Pacers. And the Pacers, being unsavvy from a business perspective as they were, they picked this guy up and they paid him $8 million a year. I told everyone, this guy doesn't even deserve the league veteran minimum. The way that he's playing the position, I mean, Jeff Teague had a field day on them. And I don't think Paul George guarding this guy is going to make any difference. But at the end of the day, Indiana better win this series. Like I said, if they were playing around, they will win this series in 6. I still believe they can win this series in 6 games, but they better get their act together. They better win game 2. That's the only way that this prediction is going to make sense. Now let's get to the next series. The take that back. The Charlotte and the Miami Heat. The reason why the Miami Heat won this series, you know, if anybody was really watching this game, you know, I know I'm going to get a whole bunch of Heat rant. You know, I'm going to get a whole bunch of Heat haters saying, oh, you just hating on the Miami Heat. But the reality is I watched the game and I was utterly disgusted. Just like I'm utterly disgusted with every Miami Heat game that I watch. The reason why they won this game, they won it 99-88. They had nearly 30 foul calls to Charlotte's single-digit foul calls. This is crazy. This is ludicrous. If the Miami Heat is such a great team, at least in this first round, they don't need the referees to cheat for them. They don't need the NBA to rig the system for them in this first round. I don't get it. Why are they getting rigged for a team that they're supposed to beat in the first place? They're supposed to be talented enough to win. Look at the score, 99-88. This means that Charlotte was in the game, even with Al Jefferson having the plantar fasciitis issue. They still were in this game. This is pathetic, man. This is why I keep telling everybody, if the NBA allows a level playing field, this overrated Miami Heat team, the AKA Heatles, they will lose. They will not win anything this year. When you get nearly 30 foul calls, that's a travesty, man. That's basketball treason, man. I don't understand how a team can get that many foul calls in a game. And people sit there and blindly think, oh, the Miami Heat's just that talented. No, they're not. When you get that many foul calls, I don't care who you're playing, you're going to ultimately win that game. And this is how the Miami Heat won the game. It's just interesting that a Bobcats team that's a 7 seed that's not supposed to give the Miami Heat no kind of competition, no kind of, stress in the first round, they were able to keep the game close until the referees decided that, hey, we need to help this team out and create enough fouls for them to win this game. I can't stand watching the Miami Heat play. It's just ridiculous. And once again, this is the darlings of the NBA. LeBron James is the golden boy, so you got to keep the golden boy happy. I guess that's the mentality with the NBA. Until the Miami Heat can't deliver the goods and until LeBron James becomes a shell of himself. So the NBA is going to keep profiting off of this team. They're going to keep riding off of this guy until this guy cannot be the workhorse that he once was. This is the reality of the Miami Heat. This is why when they get to the second round and the Brooklyn Nets, which is the team I'm going to get to, once they get past this pretender, the Raptors, if the NBA allows a level playing field, I believe the Brooklyn Nets has the tools to beat the Miami Heat. Now on to the Brooklyn Nets and the Toronto Raptors. Obviously, everyone knows they won that first game. I did predict the Brooklyn Nets to win this series in 5. I knew they were going to dispatch this pretender team. I told everyone the Toronto Raptors were pretenders. And the reality is, when you got a GM like Masai Ujiri coming out saying, F Brooklyn, he's an idiot. He just pissed Paul Pierce off. You just piss off guys like Kevin Garnett. You don't piss off veterans like that. That means those veterans are going to stick it to you. They're going to let you know what time it is. They're going to tell you to shut your face. We going to beat you in 5 games. Now you just motivated us to dispatch you and cost a sweep. Now, I don't know. I'm even rethinking my predictions. I said the Brooklyn Nets was going to dispatch this team in 5 games so that they can rest their old bones and get ready for the Miami Heat, because everybody knows the Nets are geared up for Miami. This is the only team that they like. Paul Pierce hates the Miami Heat. Kevin Garnett hates the Miami Heat. This is the team that they want to play in the second round. So the Raptors were a non-factor in the beginning, but the reality is, with Masai coming out saying F Brooklyn, that's not a good look. So I think the Nets are going to stand up for Brooklyn. They might just say, you know what, let's bring the broom out and let's sweep this team. But we'll see. My prediction still stand at 5 games because I think there's going to be one game that the Nets are going to take off. And they're going to say, okay, you know what, Raptors, you're a pretender. We're going to let you get 1 game, but we're still going to beat you in 5. And the last game, this was another surprising game, the Washington Wizards and the Chicago Bulls. I had Chicago winning this, series in 6 games. Obviously, without D-Rose, like I've mentioned previously before, it makes the Chicago Bulls a scoring deficient team. And see, the thing about basketball is defense wins championships, but scoring is everything. When you cannot score the basketball, I don't care how stingy your defense is, you make the game hard for yourself. And when you don't have an impactful superstar like a Derrick Rose, you cannot impact the game offensively in ways to be able to dispatch the team as quickly as you want to. Obviously, if the Chicago Bulls had D-Rose all this year, we're not even talking about them being a 4th seed. I believe Chicago Bulls would have been a 1st seed, and they would have been the ones playing the Atlanta Hawks. D-Rose, people forget. Everybody wants to disrespect and say that Russell Westbrook is the most explosive offensive player. Don't get me wrong. Although Russell Westbrook's my boy, he is not the most important, and he is not the most explosive player in the game of basketball. That title still belongs to Derrick Rose. I don't know if people were watching earlier this year, lest they forget, lest I have to remind them. When D Rose was playing early on, D Rose was lashing up every point guard that he played against. D Rose was letting everyone know. I remember that game when he played against Damian Lillard. He was putting everybody on notice that I'm still light years, even though I had this serious injury, I'm still light years better than all of you point guards in the NBA. No one paid attention to that because D Rose didn't have enough body of work throughout the season because he got hurt. People were so traumatized by that they didn't pay attention that D Rose was starting to get into that next gear where he was going to become an unstoppable player. Probably would have ran away with the MVP that year. It's unfortunate that D Rose constantly gets hurt, but the reality is this is the Bulls situation. They are a stingy defensive team. I still believe that the Chicago Bulls will win this series. I got them to win this series in 6 games because I still believe in stingy defense. I still believe that defense wins championships. And because of the fact that they have the best defense in the NBA, I don't see John Wall and all of these guys going off as much as they are. But the reality is, the first games of the playoff have wrapped up. It's the same old, same old. We're obviously seeing that the Miami Heat are getting the overrated calls. And we're seeing other teams step up, like the Brooklyn Nets, geared up to play the Miami Heat. We see OKC, now that they have Westbrook, they resurge. We see San Antonio doing the same old, same old. Obviously, San Antonio's hungry. They want to see if they can get a crack back at the finals. And you got other teams out there like the Houston Rockets of the world, the Portland Trailblazers of the world. They're making noise. Even though Houston Rockets lost that first game, I still think they're going to bounce back because James Harden has something to say for that. The Golden State and the LA Clippers, that right there to me is going to be a very thrilling playoff matchup that I'm going to be paying attention to. But game 1 did not disappoint for a lot of these games. They gave the fans what they deserved, which was a thrilling excitement, something that fans could go back and say, these playoffs this year, they're going to be very interesting. But like I said, as long as the NBA levels the playing field, you will allow the fans to have an entertaining experience. But it's just crazy, I don't know. I'm just going to boycott the rest of the Miami Heat games for the rest of this series. I'm probably not going to watch the rest of the Miami Heat games against the Charlotte Bobcats because it's a travesty to see how many foul calls they get. It's ridiculous. It's utterly ridiculous. But, hey, anybody who loves the playoffs, just continue to support HeKnowsHisSport because I'm going to continue to bring you that heat. I'm going to continue to bring you that fire. Subscribe to this page. Check me out on Twitter. Check me out on Facebook. Check out the site, www.HeKnowsHisSport.com for all of the entertaining articles that are out there. And check me out on Google+. This is HeKnowsHisSport. Checking out.